Another thing that you can do is self-disclosure. This is where you want them to know a little bit about you, okay? But most of you here are living college lives, probably doing things adult that they don't need to know about, okay? So there's a lot of information about yourself that you're probably not going to share with them. But if you lived through a similar situation or had a story that they can learn from, that's where you might share something maybe a little bit more personal about yourself. And that way, if they're kind of going through that same type of situation, the empathy and the understanding is sometimes amazing. Sometimes these kids feel like no one has ever gone through what they've gone through. And all of a sudden you tell a story about what you lived through and they completely know that, okay, this person understands me, this person gets me. You understand their world. That might be true. On some of those more serious topics. The next one is immediacy. That's a fancy word for saying being right there in the moment. Okay, sometimes you're going along and you start getting into a serious topic or something that all of a sudden you can tell that there's some emotion there. Their eyes get red, a little watery. Okay, maybe you don't want to push that next question because you might be curious, but you don't want to kind of push them over the edge. So you just say, I notice that your eyes are red. Is this bothering you? I notice that you're looking uncomfortable, you're fidgety. Should we save this conversation for another time? Should we go get something to drink and eat? Okay. You can really observe their nonverbal cues and use that immediacy, and sometimes they don't even know they're doing it, getting fidgety or that their eyes are watering. And if you bring that up, it kind of brings them back in the moment and saying, okay, I'm here, I'm safe. Maybe I do want to go on and continue talking about this. But a very useful tool. Summarize is a very useful listening skill. Basically, they go on and on and on and on and on, and sometimes you feel like, okay, you start thinking about what you're going to do this weekend, and they're still talking about Pokemon, or they're still talking about all their girlfriends. Okay, what you can do is summarize. Go back and kind of all the important topics that they just spilled. You can kind of repeat. I heard you say this. I heard you say this. I heard you say this. Okay, that way they know you were listening for the most part all the way through what they just said. Okay, and that you care enough to remember it. Okay, so that's a very important tool. Another one. Paraphrase. What you do with this is kind of like summarizing, but what you can do with paraphrase is really take and focus. Like maybe they're talking about family. They went through a whole bunch of stuff. And all of a sudden, you realize that there was a pattern of divorce. So you can kind of paraphrase and bring it back down. I noticed that there's a lot of people who get divorced and married in your family. What do you think about that? Or with the friendship group. I noticed that every Monday you guys have problems. Why is that? Maybe they all get together every weekend, things get too stressful. Someone asked my boyfriend out. Okay? You can get into topics like that by bringing it all into one kind of focused thing. Another useful thing that a lot of these kids haven't experienced, and this is kind of going back toward more of the middle school age mentees, but goal setting. Okay. Quite often these kids are, like we said, from families where there's not a whole lot of hope. Maybe they haven't experienced a lot of things. They don't have a real clear picture of the future. Goal setting can be a very good listening and communication skill to have with these children that you can teach them. Okay? They can make a plan. You guys can, make goals for activities in the future. Look through that sheet, see what they want to do. Kind of make plans, set a goal. Or maybe there's something that you want to accomplish. Like for the guys, I want to build a boat out of Legos. If you're going to do a big fancy one, it might take a while. So you kind of set a goal, we're going to have this accomplished by next February. Okay, and then that way it's an activity you can always go back to. You keep putting it on the shelf. Okay. Along with that is decision making. Like I said, these children a lot of times are very poor at that. Showing them how to make a list of options. Going through those options, finding out what's going to be best, what might not work, and then choosing one. Okay? So decision making can be a very useful tool, very good communication skill to use with these children. Another thing, going back to really, when you're listening to what they're talking about. In one of my resources, they call it this. An educated hunch. Okay? They get in a pattern of something. You kind of identify that. You say, my guess is if this doesn't change, this is going to happen. Okay? Or kind of like you want to paraphrase or summarize a little bit, but they really haven't gotten to it. It's just something you've kind of noticed. You can say, it seems like every time you're with Sally and Jenny and the other Sally comes, it gets really bad. Okay? Or you sabotage this. You do something to make everyone fight. Okay? That's, you're just kind of making a hunch, making a guess. And then, oh yeah, I guess I kind of do that. It helps them change some patterns. And another very important one is encouragement. This is one that's very important because, like we said, a lot of times these children have low self-esteem. Anytime you can find that they do something successful, acknowledge that. Okay, make a point to praise that, to commend them for that. It really knows that you care about their world, that you care about their success, and it'll make them want to achieve more. And the more they achieve, the more they can tell you, and then the more you can praise them. Okay, so it's a nice cycle there that encouragement can start. A few things then to finish up. When you're working with these children, and there's lots of times where we may know them a little bit in the counseling office, but we can only spend so much time with them ourselves. And a lot of times it's not weekly. And if you can get into that routine, or even every other week, look for patterns. A lot of times, like I said, with friends or family, there's things that we don't see. And you'll start noticing things that you can communicate to us that maybe we in the counseling office need to address with them. Because we're going to try and communicate with you guys as much as possible, or through Joe, to help these kids out. The other thing is look for discrepancies. Like I said, they might be telling a story one day, and then the next week they tell a different story, kind of referring to the same thing. Call them on it. The other thing is a lot of these kids, well, it's kind of a made-up word that Carlene and I use, is they'll awfulize things. All of a sudden they'll come in and then just say, I was late to school, and then this went bad, and this went bad, and this went bad, and they just, nothing went right for them that day. They're just bummed out. Okay, find the discrepancy. Find something that, what did work for you today? What was it? What was that, sunshine of your day that we could talk about, so it doesn't look so bad. The other thing with a lot of these children, and especially if they're more from dysfunctional families, they think in black and white. It's either this or that. And kind of going back to the decision making and goal setting, helping them look for options, letting them know that it's not just always black or white. There's a lot of gray, and you can find a lot of solutions or options by looking into things. Another thing that we want you looking for is identify and eliminate game playing. Okay, game playing is kind of that social term for, a lot of you guys probably understand it, that go downtown on the weekends. There's a lot of game playing that goes on in bars. A lot of game playing that goes on in a lot of social situations. Okay, middle school kids, elementary kids are very good at it. They find a way to control adults. Okay, and you can probably talk to their teachers about some of these. They know how to initiate irritation, annoy you. They do that first step, you start getting annoyed. Then they know that the game has started. So then they do something more to annoy you, then you will try and react to that. And then they're totally in control of the situation. So try and identify and eliminate any game playing that you'll see with these children, and try and stay normal and in a healthy focus. All right. And I guess the last thing is help your mentee achieve a new perspective. Kind of like I had said toward the beginning, is a lot of these children haven't had the opportunities to get out and experience an SDSU basketball game. Or I know one child that I was working with, the farthest he had ever traveled from Brookings was Sioux Falls. And he was a 7th grader. That's the farthest he'd ever been. Never flown in a plane. Never traveled on a bus. Never went on a train. 1 or 2 trips to Sioux Falls, and that's his experience of the world. Okay? Give them a new perspective and know that there's a lot more out there and a lot more things than they can do than what their parents have probably provided for them. And that even helps us, even with just career counseling that we do. They may think that the only thing they can do is what their parents have done for occupations, or maybe their grandparents. Tell them about your majors. Let them know that college is an option for most of them. Let them know that there are other things that they can get into than what they've just seen from their families. Okay. Any questions about any of that? Anything I missed, Carlene?
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about the decision-making part on this. If it's a big decision, you probably need to stay away from giving advice and getting passed on that. And I'm a little bit leery on that because we've had the mentee go to the parent and say, my mentor told me to do this. And that puts you guys in a tough position. And then, so if it's a big decision, help them brainstorm, coming up with their ideas, and then work through either the parents or work through us on that. Okay? Does that make sense? Because if it's a really big deal and you give them some advice, and let's say it goes wrong, the parents are going to blame you, and even the child will blame you. So